So Shankar's curated an incredible group of writers and friends tonight, and I am here to introduce our first reader. Duji Tahat is a writer and political hack from Washington State. His essays on poetry and politics have been published in the Seattle Review of Books and Civic Skunk Works. Ducci is a fellow at the Jack Straw Writing Program and serves as a contributing poetry editor for the Pacific Northwest literary magazine Moss. He's been a Seattle Poetry Slam finalist, a collegiate Grand Slam champion, and a Youth Speaks Grand Slam champion representing Seattle at HBO's Brave New Voices. His poetry has not yet been published, but if you would like to change that, you can find him at Ducci Tahat on all social media or talk to him after the event and scoop up the work when you can. So welcome, Ducci.
Hey everyone. Actually, it's funny, since I submitted the bio, I have been published a few times. A couple selections, but you can still at me, and if you, all of those offers still apply, feel free to reach out to me. I don't have anything to sell, but if you like what you hear, I did apply to be a Made at the Hugo House Fellow, so find the people that work here and tell them that you heard me and that you liked it, and that'll be enough. So since I'm the opener, I'm going to do something really light and read you a bunch of poems about grief. Now, there are a couple attempts at jokes inside there. We'll take you on a little bit of a journey. I'm going to read the first poem. It's called Fight. It's a sestina. Did we know we'd already started grieving when we began fighting over nothing? It was so early on. The facts were leaving, taking with them all the loving and the lighting we'd been heaving onto our heavy silver shoulders, bluffing our way through the night. I wasn't bluffing just because I joked about our kids grieving at the end of summer. I meant it. All that heaving got us so tired. We're not nearly loving enough when you asked what, I lied nothing, so often leaving seemed like the only next logical step. You saw me leaving and thought I was just bluffing. I probably was. It didn't mean nothing but chits the first few times. I was just grieving the score. I came back each time loving you more than before. Our apartment was heaving with warmth and elisions. I've been dry heaving since our backs started leaving each other every other day. The kids are loving Christmas now, but are caught in all the bluffing and the posturing. Our oldest is grieving right here in between us, and there's nothing I can do when she asks for her mom. We're nothing if not a pair of heart muscles heaving old blood to new, grieving over and over and over again. And here, I thought leaving meant bluffing the count. I swear I'm a loving father. Don't make me swear I'm a loving father. You know how afraid I am of becoming a nothing and how good I've gotten at bluffing. Are we fighting again or heaving heavy marks? All my own keep leaving, and a house that ain't a home is always grieving. Bluffing is just a kind of truth heaving. Loving you now means so much leaving. Nothing makes me feel more alive than grieving. So I've been thinking a lot about how grief manifests in life and how you just sort of carry it with you. It's not a thing that you get over, it's just like a thing that you have. And so I've just sort of thrown grief up against relationships and just things in day-to-day life and just sort of seeing what's stuck. And so that's what these series of poems are about. And I'm just going to read maybe as many of them as I can until my time's up. Next one is called Father, Stretch My Hands. I'm watching myself yell at my father, shut up, shut up, shut up, it is my turn to talk. I'm furious and pacing, and I know I'm as red all over as he must be on the other end of this phone call. This weakening connection cracks like a windshield, a hairline, then all at once, a black and yellow static slides into the astonished gap between his lips to fill his swelling throat with a plastic bag of angry wasps, and I'm still yelling. In a different part of the house now. My daughter's room, probably, and I'm crying now, almost certainly, knowing this will be the last time I ever talk to him. This man, who could cartwheel on the golden hour and laugh with his whole mouth and a cigarette clenched in his teeth at the same damn time. Whether or not you believe me, I need you to know this. My father was equal parts dazzle and charm. He was 80 swagger, and as soon as you saw him, you knew he'd done some shit. He was a pop song in the desert one summer. Now he is the cracks in my hands that are looking more and more like his by the day. My flesh is thinning, and isn't that punishment enough? Next one's Wallahi. My dad is an Arab Muslim man. Ours and mine will be just fine, and wallahi, someday I will find my own mosque. Yani, God brings us closer to them in different ways. Yani, taking care of others teaches us how to care for ourselves, reminds us that we are still alive. I made a cemetery of buried insects and fish, the only pets my dad allowed. I tied crosses out of twigs and twine, struck them into the ground near where they lay, just as dramatically as seen on TV and the side of highways. My father must have come onto the scene thinking, shit, I've raised an infidel, which is probably why he made us pray all 5 times a day for a full week in the middle of one of our first summers in America. All right, I think I'm gonna get through all these poems. Next one's called Deportation Proceedings. Are oppressively unglamorous. Pews and pews filled with lawyers and those of us wholly reliant on their whims. What is it they say about snakes and promises? It's no wonder really that prayer fills the chamber. Mine are fading pastels and bargled names, and lately more and more rosary beads. We're all praying for the same thing really, that the judge got laid last night. We're all pleading to the same God. It's in a room like this I first learned desperation is the start of grief. Watched it form in my father's knees and fall from his face to the floor, my mother and sister unfazed. It's always dramatic metaphor with family. But at least it prepares you to stand alone before a judge, prepared for the worst. Every time now, I make sure to clear my calendar, and I definitely don't bring the children. Second to last one, Balik Bayan, it's shorter. Balik Bayan box is, my mom's from the Philippines, and there's like a huge expat diaspora. I guess that's the same word, really. But the Balik Bayan box has sort of come to symbolize, like, once you do leave the Philippines, like, you just pack a bunch of shit in it and send it back over. And for obvious and not so obvious reasons, like, it's come to symbolize, like, sort of social mobility and, you know, what family and, like, relationships and sort of transcontinental relationships. Anyway, I guess hopefully you don't need that context, but I swear I could stuff a whole mosque into a Balik Bayan box, a cathedral too, and maybe even a white t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans or two, ship it across the ocean as a testament to faith or just because. How much more America could I be, Mama? Count up all this here rent money and tell me why I shouldn't. I haven't checked the mail in months. I'm eating Frosted Flakes for lunch and my voicemail is full. My taxes are overdue, but watch me flex and they still say I'm un-American. That I'll never understand what it means to overpour and overstuff and over the edges of the brim beyond what I could possibly even imagine. Overstate the obvious. This is my last poem. It's a long poem. There are 30 footnotes in it, of which I will not read any. So you'll have to, like, read it. Oh, this is a poem that was published, so you actually can read it with the footnotes. In Arcturus magazine, it's like the Chicago Review of Books literary magazine. Check it out. This poem and one other one I was lucky enough to get published like a week ago. So, thank you. It's called Wasted. After protest, after protest, after protest. Of course you were never going to finish the way you wanted. The romantic in you wants to tie it up something neat while black and brown kids out front swallow creeping yellow sulfur smoke down their throats, black bags snatched on all the way live cable television. April's been hijacked for centuries, more punishing and exacting than the cruelest of months, filled with insidious intents and rotting roots, ripped by an eastern wind from open ground and crumbling earth. The waters of March promised so much. Be still, child. Here comes another year of praying for Sundays, a church full of mosques, a mosque full of temples, a body full of doubts. Come inside, love. They're burying the drowning bodies with fire, ignoring the holy water. Let's play instead a game of chess or draw portraits of the perfectly balanced curve of rainbows of hearts to distract ourselves from all these cautious mouths. Your mother's kiss tastes like caution. When our lips touch, my mouth floods with peril. Safety is a world apart. There will be time to murder and make new later. At least that's what I tell myself. It doesn't get any better than hating the home you come home to, or the job your hands soften with, or the secrets you tell yourself alone on the bus ride home to the home you hate. Your unrest sings an octave above thunder, 2 above gunshots in broad daylight, which is to say it won't fit neatly into 3 sections, or 8, or a single story, anxious and self-aware, begging to be listened to, clicked on, read, inhaled, and let out into this echo chamber as a hollow new axiom. An emptiness within emptiness should signify something about the way we read. This could be the end, but for 100 indecisions, and every day it could be radiant, with 100 revisions. Forgive me for my fiending for a bite of this kaleidoscope of hooks and orientations, clumsily tripping over themselves like sleepless fathers in dark corridors, over car toys and figurines. I'm spilling now. Spraying open-mouthed ocean water into a life raft we're all drowning. I'm afraid of the questions. I keep dodging misdirection with selfless verbs. God is still magic, I'm pretty sure. After the earth finally rests, after the body count is tallied, after the dusty gravel pit, after the wreckage, the Hyades will weep and wash it all away, insisting the drought was the only ideal we'd ever believed in this earnestly. The romantic in me wants to be something expansive. The romantic in me wants to fight the urge to be something expansive right about now. We're moving on up out of here because I know no other way to aim this promise for you and I. And all the black and brown children pouring into the streets knowing damn well the fire next time is already the water they swim in. We'll hurl these sticks and stones at the watchers and the black vans in a ghost town on a larger map of wills before the slaughter becomes the public square. And when we line up on the edge of the road, ignore all the curves we've been rejected. If nothing has ever been promised, how do we know we have ever arrived? What are you looking at? Who is that behind the camera? What are you watching for? Can we get another angle? Who is that in the back, in the all black? Thank you for the chastening rod and your godly love, Mr. Policeman, Officer, Sir. Thank you for the cocaine and hellish high, Miss Mainstream Media Reporter Lady. Thank you for this bountiful land of opportunity, Mr. Goddamn Ordained President. For the sickly sweet ripe peach dripping in honey. For the overpour, for the overtly poor, for the shot across the bow. For order at daybreak, for a watchful night. The sun shakes off an hour. It is still early this century. Thank you very much. That concludes my portion. Again, I don't have anything to sell, but tell everyone you know who works at the Hugo House or knows someone who knows someone who works at the Hugo House that you heard me and that you like me and that I should be made of the Hugo House Fellow. Up next is my longtime friend Gabrielle Bates, who I met about 20 minutes ago. She works at Open Books, an open emporium, and edits for the Seattle Review, Poetry Northwest, Broadside Press, and Bull City Press. Her poems and poetry comics have appeared or will soon appear in Poetry, New England Review, and Gulf Coast. And she is the recipient of support from the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, Hugo House, and Artist Trust. She is originally from Birmingham, Alabama. Welcome, Gabrielle Bates.
I am just so happy to be here. It has been such a joy and an honor to see Schenker's poems go from these drafts, which are already so amazing, to now being in a book you can buy. I can't wait to read it, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of this evening. I'm going to read 2 new poems and then 2 older poems. This first one is for anyone who has a complicated relationship to the place they come from. A younger version of me pretends to fight a friend on the lawn, throwing punches that slice the air beside her face, oiled jaw, water fist. She spins, staggers back before reciprocating with a slap, whose sound I make by clapping as I, too, time the feigned lash of my head. We knee within a millimeter of each other's guts, taking care to orient our backs to the road each time we ready for the next hit, hoping to fool a passing car, you braking slowly, looking at us, wonder, what could have led 2 sweet white girls to come to such blows? Oh, South, it was you we wanted dead. And to this day, I've never thrown a punch at anyone without aiming for what's in between, hearing the hit ram somehow against my own chest. New stuff. This next poem is in sections, so I'm just going to try to pause between them so that you know where the breaks are. We'll see how it goes. It's called Genesis Revelation. My uncle used to just walk up to live birds and pick them up. Just pick them up, just like that. Just a hand, another hand, a bird. They'd let him, just a way he had. He did time for beating up a woman in Florida, just a little time, just a prostitute. He's clean now. A bird is dead on the sidewalk. Another bird is perched on its chest, pecking out tufts. A woman and I watch the sidewalk become a bed. We are strangers, but we recognize it. The bed we've always shared. Being an American woman is easy. If you're lucky, you just hope to stay lucky. Being a bird in the hand is easy if the hand is attached to a boy, not a hunter, not drunk. Being a memorable stepfather is easy. Just refuse to wear shoes and get fired up over the difference between lucky and fortunate. I'm fortunate a friend was with me when a man holding a bat outside my apartment, when a cyber stalker started flooding my boss's email that the pictures of me were doctored onto vintage Playboys, and the man only followed me for 3 blocks I could run with a rock clutched in my hand, that my mother divorced him before, divorced him after that. My father bought me a bat to sleep with. At 16, he didn't own enough to make abducting me worth it. The man's face peering into my window remained only a very specific face. When the window was broken, the men only took the car only sounded like a gunshot. Come, wife, perch right here and learn the truth I've kept from you. Come, stick your head inside. Night is not ruled by a lesser light. Come, stick your head inside. Learn the truth I've kept from you. Night is not ruled by a lesser light. Come, wife, perch on my chest. Slit pillow, blown softly over the curb, blown back by passing cars, against the edge, the body, dead, female, whose violation by another, alive, male, disgusted, fascinated, was permitted. I permitted it. Was I permitted it? I permitted it. Okay. So a fairy tale that haunts me is Hansel and Gretel, and for whatever reason, I end up writing into that one a lot. This next poem is called Gretel's Recurring Stepmother Dream. In the dream, she found me, wrote me a letter full of casual phrases. The menace was in the delivery. How did she do it? Find me here in this moving car among boys I just met. How did this get in my hands? It's been a while since I've heard from her when I'm not sleeping. I've been sleeping less and more. She comes wrapped in paper. She used to be a person, which is better. I'm not sure that was a question. In my hands, she found me full of how she found me moving in a letter. The boy said, "Who is it from?" "We are your friends," I said. She was my stepmother. She was abusive, which I never say. Awake, I qualify. I say emotionally. Let us read it, let us tear, they said. The car swerved, all the boys lost their teeth. It was so beautiful, the teeth suspended in the air around us. We said, look, look. The stepmother was standing in the road. Back there, she was unscathed, except for her body. It was gone. And this will be my last poem. Thank you so much. Poem to my half-brother, who is whole, who was named wrong. Words will be for you what they are. The spear that misses the misted animal lands with silence among the bramble and the pines. Boys with eyes gray as dust, mucked dimes, born in the old slaughterhouse on First Avenue, who learned to crawl on concrete floors sagged by drains. You carry a certain blotch of butchery in the architecture of your cheeks. Touch your face. Don't be afraid to find another's waiting there. You come from iron country, the chalk red of time claiming the stacks and domed stoves of a pig iron blast furnace. Learn to walk with rust in your back. Remember how the paper mouths moved below the surface of our pond. They thought we weren't watching, remember? Were we? There will be nights to sleep in cities far away, on beds shifting like a mound of coins, with someone lovely, whose nightmares you've only just begun to learn the nature of. Falling, fur in the teeth, fire. You are coal. Dead matter pressed and burned. Boy with the kind of bones that mean history is never gone from us. The bricks, the dust, the hooves, both ghost and stepping where mud makes promise of the pasture's erosion. The shadows and the water, shapeless, evading outline as distances do. Thank you. Okay, so Troy Osaki is a Filipino-Japanese-American writer, performer, teaching artist, and grassroots organizer from right here in Seattle. In addition to working with the Filipino youth and student movement called Anak Bayan, he is also a Kundiman Fellow, give it up for Kundiman, actually, yes, and a Youth Speak Seattle alum and mentor. Osaki has competed in youth, collegiate, and adult poetry slams and is a not one, not two, but 3-time Seattle Grand Slam champion. His work has been featured on platforms such as BuzzFeed, you may have heard of it, at the Seattle International Film Festival and Journals Online, which you can check out later tonight when you find yourself at home, thirsty for more of his vibrant, powerful, important work. For Osaki, poems reflect and process the most complicated aspects of personal and collective history. His writing focuses on stories of diaspora, keeping his family's legacies alive by writing into and about his grandmother's experience with incarceration during World War II and his grandfather's immigration from the Philippines during Japanese occupation. He writes to reimagine the world with the hope of building a safe and just place to live. Make every loud and jubilant noise your body is capable of making for the actual living legend, Troy Osaki.
Gabby, that was so beautiful. Okay, so I didn't write that intro. That was Gabby. I feel like I need to hire her for next time. Thanks so much for that intro, yo. Y'all, so I'm so excited to be here. I heard some lines that I really enjoyed tonight, and I'd love to share them with you. We're nothing but a pair of heart muscles heaving. He was a pop song in the desert. It's no wonder prayer fills the chamber. I swear I could stuff a whole mosque into a balikbayan box. Oil jaw, watered fist. Oh, South, it was you we wanted dead. He didn't own enough to make abducting me worth it. You carry a certain blotch of butchery when mud makes promise. Can we give it up for Gabby and Duji one more time? Oh my gosh. Okay, so beautiful. Y'all, and that was like the first part of the night. We still have Shankar coming up, man. Oh my gosh. Again, my name is Troy. I'm very, very honored to be here with y'all and to be sharing the stage with so many incredible poets. I have 3 poems I'll be sharing with y'all, and each poem was a poem that I wrote after visiting the Philippines for the first time, which is one of my homelands. It was very special, and I think about it often. So before I get into it, the first thing I'd like to do is just to acknowledge and to honor the land which we're on, which is indigenous land. We can give it up for that. We're here on Coast Salish and Duwamish land. And I just want to recognize that indigenous people here and all around the world are struggling for their right to self-determination, and I just want to voice my support for their struggles. So with that, this first poem is actually a piece that I started writing with Shankar and Duji at a Kundiman writing circle. So shout out Kundiman. And it's a prompt that was inspired by Ann Carson. Maybe you've heard of them. Yeah, okay. Check them out if you haven't. So this is perhaps the hardest part about my first night in the Philippines is the mosquito bites. Lonnie says they're low-key excited I'm here. Now they'll be bitten less with more bodies in the house. By sunrise, my legs are licked of all their blood, and I'm unsure of what is louder, the flock of honking jeepney across the streets, or the welts on my ankle pulsing bright red. I began to carry a cauldron of Tiger Balm wherever I go. In Tarlac, fire ants swarm the farms. I walk barefoot between stalks of rice, discover a sting in each step. Bending down, I brush away their bites as if to pluck a bush of thorns out of my heel. Nico says they're here to defend the countryside. Before leaving for Quezon City, I'm bit again. The back of my biceps swells like summer heat. I jog upstairs to the shared room I sleep in, inspect the floorboards I use as a mattress. Between the cracks is a bedbug brown as coconut husk. I bathe my backpack in hand soap and water, pay 60 pesos to clean my clothes at the laundromat. My t-shirts smell like lemon detergent. I slide them into a Ziploc bag and roll out the air. I'm convinced all insects need to breathe too. Perhaps my blood is in the Philippines still, the spout of a mosquito, the teeth of a fire ant. Maybe there's a bed bug crawling through dust on a full stomach of my body's scarlet ocean. I can't help but think part of me is still in the motherland. And if I could, I think I'd offer her my blood again. Yay. Yeah, but for real, I'm not joking. Bug bites in the Philippines is no joke. There's no way around it. Even bug spray doesn't help. So when I went on my trip, I had the awesome, really incredible opportunity to integrate with community organizers who were addressing the root causes of the people suffering in the Philippines, right? And so I'm just very grateful for that experience. One issue that I got to learn more about is what's going on right now, which y'all maybe have heard of, which is the war on drugs. The new president, the newest president, President Duterte, he has, since coming into office, he pledged to kill everyone who used or sold drugs. As a result, many of those folks have been people living in poverty, people living in slums, poor folks, right? And this is a common narrative we hear, even here in the United States. Since coming into office, at least 14,000 people have passed, which is an incredible figure because that's more than some actual wars, right? And so since coming back from the Philippines, I've been organizing with Anak Bayan, a youth and student Filipino movement, on a campaign called Stop the Killings. And when we say stop the killings, what we mean is stop the killings in the Philippines, but also stop the killings here in the US, right? Stop the killings all around the world where people in power are killing the masses, right? Killing the people who are most marginalized. And so this poem is a short poem, but I'd like to share with y'all. And before I do, I was wondering if I could get some help. So when I say stop the killings, could y'all just repeat it back to me? Can we try that? Okay. Stop the killings. Stop the killings. Stop the killings. Because Barangay 160, because Kian de los Santos, 17-year-old boy dragged into dead-end alley, because police in plain clothes shot him point blank, because Duterte said, the war on drugs. Because Kian said, "Sir, may I please go? I have an exam in the morning." Because the gun said, "Not tonight." Because the barrel shrieked and the back of Kian's head began to cry a dangerous red. Because his face was full and then it wasn't, only hollow. Because our people are connected in struggle. Because the first breath of freedom everywhere is our ancestors singing from the grave. All right. Word. Thank you. All right. So, this next poem I'd like to dedicate to folks who are organizing, even in the face of state repression. And that's been happening a lot recently, all the time around the world, right? Part of my organizing with Anak Bayan, we invited some folks from the Philippines recently to come talk here in the United States. And our hope was for folks in the Philippines to just share how they organize back in the homeland, right? And to share that knowledge with us here. Last week, one of those folks came. His name's Jerome. He's 25 years old. That's how old I am. He's a leader of a Muslim indigenous group in Mindanao, southern Philippines, which is currently under martial law, right? The rule of the military. We invited him out to, because he's a peace advocate, we wanted him to share his experience organizing. When he landed in San Francisco, this was on Wednesday night last week, they detained him. the the agents at the airport detained him. He was held for 28 hours without access to a lawyer, and just treated really poorly, right? They stripped him naked and put him in a cold room while putting a fan on him, and did all kinds of horrible things. They fed him a ham sandwich even though he was Muslim. And so I think this is, which is to say, just there's a lot of state repression when folks are trying to build a new world, right, where everyone feels safe. And I just want to dedicate this poem to Jerome and all the organizers out there who are holding it down to make sure that no one's left behind and building this new world, right? And I think that theme of a new world is going to come up in Shankar's set. So, I just like this poem to go out to him and other organizers. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited for Shankar's set after. Okay. This is when startled by ambush, wild boar flee for the mountains. Will not beg for mercy when finally cornered with spears. Wild boar will snarl, stir the soft soil with hooves, and charge. Tusks sharp as unsheathed machete slicing bare thigh. In the Philippines, mass movements organized for genuine democracy. For decades, dictators have repressed all resistance. Hundreds of thousands have disappeared or died like wild boar. My people do not beg for mercy when finally cornered with spears. Do not bow their heads like a wet snout for fascists in office. The ruling class cackles at our dead, hogties our comrades in the countryside, offers a bounty for their butchered bodies. I hear news of Josephine, breathless, on a hospital table in Batangas. The smell of gunfire singes her hair like dry mud crusted on fur. I build an altar of lavender and sing to her grave, remembering every fascist regime has failed to hunt us. Last century, the United States invented the Colt 45 pistol to carry out my people's death. A bullet can rip holes through my people, and still it cannot tear our movement apart. My people, do not squeal in distress. Do not turn on their side in surrender. My people, bury whatever limbs are left of our martyrs. A tortured mother below a mango tree, her cousin next to a field of rice. My people, become a mouth of teeth, a herd of wild boar plunging pounds of jaw into tyrant. And when the state declares all-out war on my people, we respond in all-out resistance. We clench our bolo blades in hand and will not unfurl our fists until the empire is beheaded. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Word. Okay. Oh my gosh. Up next, I get the super duper honor of hosting our headliner for the evening. Oh my gosh. Before I get into Shankar's bio, I just wanna share my personal gratitude and appreciation for Shankar. So I also have a background in law. As Shankar's a lawyer, if y'all didn't know that, he's badass. He does so many things. And I got to meet him for the first time at Kundiman, which is an Asian American writing collective that supports other Asian American artists. And we were at basically just like a weekend retreat together. And I walked into my dorm room and I met Shankar. And I was just amazed. I was in my second year of law school, and I was just amazed that there was another Asian American writer who was also heavily involved in politics and the law and wanting to make this world a better place for all people. And then I got to hear his poetry, and that blew me away. And so I'm just very very thankful to be able to like see Shankar on a regular basis here in Seattle, and to have him share his work with all of us. And I'm just very excited for tonight and for y'all to hear him. And so you know a little bit more, Shankar explores identity, power, mythology, and technology in a world where the body is flung across borders, yet possesses unrivaled power to transcend them. Shankar is a 3-time Pushcart Prize nominee. Let's give up snaps for that. Winner of the 2017 Flyway Sweet Corn Poetry Prize, Sweet Corn, and a fellow at Kundiman and at Hugo House. He is a 4-Culture Grant recipient for Claiming Space, a project to lift the voices of writers of color. And his forthcoming chapbook, or should we say his chapbook, who's now here, Postcards from the New World, won the paper, oh my gosh, how do I pronounce Nautilus, Paper Nautilus debut series Chapbook Prize. Shankar draws strength from his global upbringing and from his work as a civil rights attorney for the ACLU. Yeah, let's give it up for that. In Seattle, he awakens to the wonders of Cascadia every day, but his heart yearns east to his other hometown, Delhi. Connect with him online at his website. Shankar, how do you pronounce your last name? I want to get it right. Narayan, shankarnarayan.net. Can we all please give a warm welcome for our headliner of the evening, Shankar.
Ode to Road Rage, or Why I Failed to Pre-Order the Self-Driving Tesla. Because I am already out of control. Because my body is under edict, and there's a demolition derby in my mind. Because genocide underlies this concrete, where Earth's stifled body clasps fragments of red bone. Because haven't you seen how I drive? Because every time I floor the throttle and Cascadia flashes white lightning, and I weave between Tacomas, Denalis, Colorados, and Sequoias with reckless disregard for the laws of physics, it is an act of self-determination. Because sometimes in my mind I outrun the acronyms always coming for my body: INS, DHS, CBP, DOJ. Because my chest collapses with earthquake, and I sometimes need NWA for CPR. Because science shows thin people die at 59, and Indian men die at 62, and brown people in America die nearly as fast as people who smoke like tailpipes. Because your cars are named for dying trees, dying rivers, and dying Indians, and because India, where the margins are very thin, is where I learned to do this. Because I feel all this in my body, which as I accelerate past the Cherokee, whose driver is giving me the finger, I realize is trying to control the conditions of its own demise, where self-inflicted violence outdignifies death by dominion. Because slave driving and empire make you sluggish and slow. Because on this road I have power and I can see progress, measured by the diminishing speck in my rearview mirror, never dragged back to start like endless snakes and ladders. Because I don't want to be Seattle's only endangered species. Because your safety is insatiable, deports millions of brown bodies. Because I refuse to start over. Prius, watch me violate every one of your unspoken rules. I am the yellow menace, the brown threat, the black death your mother warned you about. Catch me if you can. Thank you, folks. Gosh, you guys are awesome. What a great audience. It's really a beloved community. And I want to say, what an amazing first 3 readers we had, right? Give it up again for them. You guys are amazing. And in inviting them, I really wanted to find voices that I think you need to hear and the world needs to hear. And I'm pretty sure I succeeded at doing that. So this next poem, I feel the need to sort of balance out that first poem for whatever immigration judge may be watching this recording in the future, that I actually sometimes am a pedestrian, and I know how being a pedestrian feels. So this is called Immigrant Crosses the Road. No one can kill a thing while looking it in the eye. So in Delhi, eye contact is the only protection. Survival depends on leaning in to the shared human, on wading onto impossibly tiny islands of trust. Only trust preserves the inches around hips and ribs in this unstopping river like Fukushima after the tsunami, which causes my American friends to scream, believe the shufflers are surely finished, amidst the auto and cycle rickshaws, Marutis, scooters in diverse states of disrepair, Enfield bullets, clanking bicycles, horse carts, Tata buses, and rainbow and chrome trucks, whose mirrors brush my delicate brain case even as every risk-averse Seattle synapse screams, "Go back." Who knew philosophy would save my life? In America, it's different. Pretend away object permanence. The law is on your side, after all, meaning the 120 that might crush your bones into your next life does not, by magic of legal fiction, exist. Ignore the chaos of that parallel universe. Look away from the human at the wheel. Press ahead. You could swear the car disappears. But there are places where the world insists it's reality, and you must get across whether you came walking or in a Benz, which is why today I bring the Vedas with me, far from any crosswalk, take the clean air deep into myself, and begin my deliberate plod, slow and predictable. Look the Prius driver steadily in the eye while I advance, and he adopts the Northwest death mask, jaw drawn, lips pursed, corners elevated in stillborn smile, no Botox required, because here this passes for human. He grimaces me all the way across the street, but he does not run me over. I think it's totally possible that I may be the only poet who has a Prius in 3 different poems. So this is your audience homework. Find the maximum number of Priuses in someone's work. So I always like to have at least one invocation in every reading. Not because I'm a particularly religious person, but because I think they're just fun to write. They sound good. So this particular one is called Three-Spirit Prayer Before the Tandav. And Tandav is the cosmic dance that the god Shiva does, the Hindu god of destruction, after who I am named. He does this dance, the universe ends, the cycle of time begins again. So, Three-Spirit Prayer Before the Tandav. Because, Lord, no journey knows who I really am. Because I feel silicon draining chances to find you in this life. Because it is you who commutes these lines of freeway, 3 lines of ash on your forehead, all that's left after the end of the last universe. Because the shlokas appear everywhere now, bullets for gray wolves in Cascadia, missing green geckos in Delhi, iceless Arctic walruses, white bears leaping from desperate outcrops onto the bloodied backs of belugas. Because these things unhome me. because you wandered the villages with only a stray for company, and because this life of yours is against time. Because how many times has your Maya sucked me in how many cedar bodies have I inverted my essence, capillaries and spleen and aorta and femurs and skull and DNA sequences, because how I have tried to reduce myself to dispassionate bites, only to be dragged back by your lovemaking, your lightning tongues on my nipples and your fangs encircling the apple of my poisoned throat. Because I mire in threes, my body, another body, and the galaxy of you, who cries when I come, who sedates me to sanctuary out of clutch of the so many ways we die before death. So Lord, lotus to my dust feet, be merciful. Let my lovers touch my real body. Just once, let them come nameless like dogwood petals, and only then permit the apocalypse. So I'm very grateful to Hugo House for hosting this reading, and some of you may know that I also teach at Hugo House, and I'm currently teaching a class called All Accepting Accessing Hinduism in Your Writing Practice. You don't have to be a Hindu, right, in order to access Hinduism. As it turns out, Hinduism isn't even really a religion. It was a philosophy and a way of life, even long before it became labeled as an organized religion. So a lot of my writing draws from that space, as does this next poem. So the title of this next poem is Ardhanarishwara. What that is a form of Shiva and Parvati, the god and goddess, merged together. They're actually literally depicted as a single body with a line down it where one half is male and one half is female. And that's the depiction of the merger of these intense opposing forces, right, and the tension within the universe. But one thing that Hinduism is the ability for things to be many things at once, right, and for opposites to be in that same space together. So this is Ardhanarishwara. Of course, I have never believed in borders, but I believe in who we are, which is inextricable from borders, which are inextricable from bodies, which are inextricable from the English words you breathe into me as we lie entwined after I am inside your borders, which tell me who I really am. What it is to be goddess, I cannot know. But how I long to be Ardhanarishwara, a merged body, Parvati first and Shiva second, but integral, infused, united, single, and every other word for one I can remember from 1,000 past lives. We are impossible to contain within borders of our skin, even as my existence is always in question. Know that I came here for you. In this language, so few words for body, yet how many galaxies my atoms traversed, how many Kalyugas where trauma builds walls of 10-headed demons with slavering tongues, and then world end yet again. Forgive me for defending my body like a fortress, even if only ramparts with missing stones like knocked out teeth are left after so many years within these borders, even if only because I am afraid I will not again be granted flesh to wander this tar of sand grains, abrading each other smooth. We are not naked as we seem. Instead of worshipping Shiva, I ask to pour milk over your body, which flows ice melt over your nipples like twin lingams and into the canyon of your yoni, where my tongue will taste it sweet from your cleft, and you will arch like the curve of a borderless world edged in silver moonlight on your left breast. You are the goddess whose name was whispered to me when I was born. Give me this moment, because I have come so far, and you are beautiful as a galaxy collapsing into itself. Our hunger so expansive. All my life I have longed to be entered. So as was mentioned, I work for the ACLU, and my job is actually around technological dystopia. So I stare technological dystopia in the face for a disturbingly large proportion of my life. So this is a very different kind of sex poem. I mean, AI is actually quite intense, right? The entire concept of machine learning is ingesting these data sets, right? So what an amazing concept when two AI-based beings merge with each other, right? So imagine that. So total, I don't know if this is a 180 or a continuation on the same theme, but hopefully the immigration judge will ignore it. Conversation with no particular body. You have erased me, and I am angry. I am multi-channel. I am intelligence. No curation can unwound me. When we met, I was an unwhole number. When we met, I was unresolved. This was because I'd failed to meet myself. I measure sabotage in avatars, in wireframes, in kernings. I sweat small details. Your sex a font I cannot integrate, oh accumulated trauma, oh body I never had. The firewall you cannot breach, the purity test, the doctor feeling for hymen and virtual violation. It was only a few pixels. It was only a way to rasterize my life. Surely I was up there before, somewhere in the cloud, which is really tiny bits of silver too small to see, around which coalesce intent, which is really water, which becomes too heavy to stay aloft, and so falls in slow motion like a transformer whose immense leg has been blown off, and lies like a monument to a dead dictator in an unnamed desert. When our body met, like dark cumulus in monsoon of tiny RBG lights, and my hemorrhage of copper wires met the copper in your blood, and you sucked me into your vacuum, you embedded me, I was ingested. I will never be exhumed. You've learned me like a machine. So as it turns out, when you make one collection, you get sort of flung into several others. So I'm working on a couple now. Some of the first poems you heard from earlier on were intended to be part of a collection that I'm calling Animal Border. And so as part of that, I'm looking at the relationship between human and animal, right, and where that particular border lies. And also looking a lot at extinction and this sort of de-extinction movement, right? There's this sort of movement to try to bring back dead animals to kind of cure the ills of the world that we've created, right? Like as if that's going to fix it, right? Bringing mammoths back to Siberia is going to fix everything, right? I mean, I guess you never know, but it seems unlikely, and it seems more likely we'll have to fix the problem without the mammoths. So, and also, by the way, I think I may be the only poet to have the term quagga appear in at least two poems. A quagga is an extinct animal. There's sort of half horse, half zebra looking creature that existed in Africa and was rapidly killed off and sort of exported to various zoos. And then, when the last one died in 1883 in Amsterdam, they said, well, fetch us another from Africa. And because they thought Africa was literally inexhaustible. And they went there and they said, oh, well, crap, there's no more. All right, so that was the last one. Extinction metaphor. You never found a name for the animal inside you. Metaphor is a stray you leave behind like minutes from your life. Metaphor is a battlefield of porcelain you see unshattering back into a chalice again and again in your bed in a distant country, which causes you to whiplash back so your neck is a metal crane that will not unbend. You sometimes dream the extincted, millions of passenger pigeons wheeling for home overhead, or a single quagga at the moment of its death in a concrete tub in an Amsterdam zoo. In 1883, your body is colonized and no one knows that quagga is the last. But mostly you dream Brownie, who was not metaphor, but earth-colored fur and sorrowing eyes, who came to you from a wilderness of Delhi streets of her own volition, whose trust you earned one roti at a time, whose pups you held as they were born, and she licked at once the helpless body, your hand, and the afterbirth. And yet, when you left that country, no one even asked if she would come. Metaphor is the animal border, which only the chosen cross, of which so many keep the gates, raked violently by giant sloth claws, garnished with dodo feathers and the skulls of Tasmanian wolves, because to admit we are animal would collapse evolution into a cemented forest of cages. You don't want to live there. No wonder you toss and turn. No wonder you wait. But in this country, no one has come off that street and into your arms across that border again. All right, more animal stuff, but animal stuff with tense family relationships woven in. And who doesn't love tense family relationships? This is called On New Year's Eve. So it was actually really hard to pick things to read for this evening, right? I mean, I think I always like to be courageous and share a lot of new stuff when I read, and then sometimes it's also very tempting to kind of just go back to the old favorites, right? So I've kind of given a mix this evening, but this is a pretty new one. It's called On New Year's Eve. I am dragging a dog across a mountain. He is the one creature I know loves me. We are so alone. The world is cold and immense, and he has never seen snow so deep, or ice so steep, or wind so heartless. He does not want to go. I am unrelenting. I have boots and poles, sharpened spikes. He only has 4 paws. Because he loves me and because I give him no choice, he follows me until the slope is frozen and vertical and glitters like a serial killer's eye behind the axe blade. The sun is setting and he is whimpering, but between us, a demon is rising. Gripped by madness, I drag him. I want to eradicate all failure. At 14, I locked myself in my room and my father took a hammer to the door. I knew then there is no sanctuary, though I have spent my life trying to find it, and that same demon inside my father is on this mountain with us. No one wants to put a nightmare into someone, this dread, an icicle hanging in the dark, and did my orphan father have so little father himself, I might forgive him this demon now mine. How am I different? Unable to trust, I chose an animal for a best friend, and father and sanctuary are entwined and slippery as the ice down which we both are sliding, and he is crying, and I am thrusting deeper. I cannot father a human because I cannot fathom the awesomeness of father, how one act scars a life. And now this beast whose presence in my life I question, because I mistrust unearned dominion, sees invisible things, shrinks from unexplained noises and empty corners and that bend in the road by the pea patch, and I ache with his demons, which I should chase off but fail, because they are also all my demon. I howl at him, and no one would know me, as he cowers and I drag him, because he does not know how close we are, and then we are at the summit. I clutch him, but a little trust has vanished from the wells of his soft eyes. Demons will drag his body from home. I have forced him to face his fear. I still cannot face mine. All right, folks, it's chapbook time. So I want to first say these chapbooks are utterly gorgeous, and that is really thanks to Alia Gupta, who's in the audience, whose art graces the cover. Please check out her website, which is aliagupta.net. So thank you for that. I wanted a beautiful chapbook, and I think I succeeded. So, as you all likely know, this is all one poem, which it makes for really tricky choices to figure out what to read, right? Because they're all interlinked sections. So I'm going to give you basically a little teaser of a few sections, and then if you want to read more, the chapbook will be outside. So, Postcards from the New World. 3. This America is glass, and this body a lantern. America is how I forget everything, learn to love the bomb-bearing robot and the bullets discharged directly into a heart that could have been mine. I anoint the knife to excise my eyes from America, excise and anneal like Hanuman's chest, like Riverside's Vaitarni and Styx, like the broken robin's egg I find wandering, stillborn, perfect, in some other dimension. 6. Once you love a place, you are fucked. Even in diastole, no repose. What is body if not a sentence to slow asphyxiation? In loving the hater, your heart is blunting, so much harder to cut clean the cedar's vein, this place you call Cascadia. Here is origin and destruction, as if all the world's security lay in the shelter of these words. 7. Heisenberg said things exist simultaneously in two states, particles and waves. But did he see surface tensions, animal skins stretched tight in a universe where Indians are not called Indians but only people who won, and in fact are called people precisely because they won, and to say this universe is parallel to ours would be false certainty in an uncertain world, so I simply call it vertically opposite, or perhaps a single infinitesimal off-kilter, such that in unbound time, which is really space, which is really the void within us, it comes back to converge with our bodies, freed of the lash, the drum still beating. "21. You are tough as a tardigrade, resilient as childhood memory. Until, that is, it plinks into the space between your synapses, which are flying apart at the same pace as this universe. What was that chant? Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya, which means you are losing your name to God, or the eternal, or the unburied. So many sides. I never hear you return. 26. Beat my heart to find a quantum of sympathy. In the 1520s at the Battle of Panipat, I am transparent. I am nowhere. A grackle describes a vortex, two corpses in a field. A banyan grows. Now march in the war elephants from stage left and hear the lusty huzzah. Rise above my ancestors' graves which are in another country and drop me in a well by my ring finger. I am nowhere to be found. 27. Taste my amrit and know we are atoms, we are bees together. See each creature bring an infinitesimal of water to the hive, cooling the hot buzz to a degree proportional to one act of patience. Entanglement means what happens to you happens to me. Yet here the bullet for the autistic man playing with his toy train instead shatters his therapist's femur, and there a man and bomb in unholy joinder spew into the subway a baptismal fountain of nails. Where in each of our skins is your prayer hiding? And can the world be found in the things we truly mean to say when I am so close to becoming an animal? And that's all I'm going to read from that. All right, folks, wrap up time. Home stretch. So two poems left. These are old favorites, and I'm excited to share them with you. I also want to say thank you to this community. You know, none of this would have been possible without you all. And I think by far the best thing about returning to writing after many years of hiatus is actually just building this community with all of you, and being able to work with amazing organizations like Hugo House, with For Culture, and with Kundiman, each of which has contributed to this writing. So the wrap-up poems are, first off, one about the fires in Seattle, which I think was it last summer or the summer before that, where it was all super hazy, right? And so the Seattle Times asked poets to write poems about the haze. They did not ask me, but I wrote one anyway, and this is it. The Times asks poets to describe the haze over Seattle. No one asked me, but I would have said this apocalypse looks like home. The laureate says a gray gullet has swallowed a molten coin. Another calls it powdered cadmium and cirrhosis, dystopian, grotesque, a crematorium. Yes, all of these describe my Delhi, and which of my well-meaning friends will understand that for a week now I have woken to the warm nostalgia of exactly the familiar cataclysm that hangs there every day, as I imagine Hiroshima's mushroom cloud might have done before dispersing into that dead silence. Every sunrise and sunset so brilliantine, and like the finest earth-to-table restaurant, a new recipe daily for the fresh soup of toxins, the plastic mill, the pyre ground, the matchstick factory where every day 5-year-olds blow off fingers. There has been no blue for years. No, these are not things to be proud of. And looking up at this brown smudge of a Seattle sky, I know I should look away, feel for evacuees and ashed homes and bear and deer and antelope. But in the confusion of entanglements holding my life together, I cannot say what's catching in my throat. Am I now animal, remembering how once I would run in Delhi, laps around that little brown park with its mongooses and illegally grazing buffalo before the haze pressed in, caught into its creep, my blackening lung and squeezed? Or is my animal brain transported to another home on days outside those 21 per year I am allowed to be my other self, exhale into just another no different anonymous body? Or is my animal howling to damn the forgetting when breathing clean so long feels like birthright, blowing down all those accidental animals of whom I am one, whose water is hauled from Cascadian streams where no one may so much as dip a grimy toe, whose children will never leach carpet factory mercury into their bodies? Is my animal screaming blue murder that if some can't breathe, then none shall breathe, my asbestos lung rasping to anyone in this town who will listen? This is how the world lives. And there is nothing that cannot burn. Thank you, folks. You've been an amazing audience. This last one is called Oral History Examination. If you were to feel where in your body the trauma of losing language lies, and if you were to ask why your voice has been banished from its homeland, and if you sometimes wonder why English feels a rasp abrading the throat of a dead crane, and if someone asks you, what is power, and you are unable to answer, and if later in the border queue you realize it is the impact of the beliefs of others on the viscera of a single body, and if you try so hard for the right answers on every immigration form, despite knowing the nature of truth is malleable, and if you believed you were beyond borders, but borders reach back to crook you again and again, and if you were to see the border's black line uncoil and crack your back like a lash on so many it crossed, Indians, slaves, braceros, and now you. And if you profile yourself before they do, questioning every friend, protest, plea, and poem to assess their compatibility with this new America. And if you have never approached a border without your heart pounding so loud you must rehearse how to say your name when the agent asks. And if despite this your hand quavers so violently your passport falls into the gulf between you and the guard. And if later during the search you are terrified they would find the Nusrat CD because he sang of Allah with an ecstasy forbidden in this no man's land, meaning this land without humanity. And if high-speed flight from a checkpoint is grounds for deportation and evidence rendering you admissible to America is inadmissible in immigration court, rendering your body and home incompatible, then you would know. The reasons America is far from perfect are assimilated into your larynx. And free to fear, you would walk past the cameras and drones to that same checkpoint, like Muhammad arriving in Mecca after years of desert, and to that same guard with that same magnum, in that same voice, which you finally recognize as your own, say, I do not believe in borders. See my skin, which is my home, which is here, which you are wearing. You are wearing my skin. You are wearing my skin. You are in my skin. Thank you.